some computer like Google Meet, I can use the virtual background, but Zoom I cannot, so I want a much better with that. It's the same computer, but it's so that the device cannot support, so I don't know what happened.
Yeah. Need to buy a new laptop.
Soon.
My laptop also like that. I cannot change background because it's outdated already. It's an old version, so I also don't bother lah. White walls and curtains it is.
You okay lah? Because the people look at background with books, racks and everything, so it's common.
Yeah, as long as it's not a toilet lah.
So you guys had your dinner?
And if I say no, are you gonna send some over?
I didn't really.
We already had.
You're from Sabah, right?
Yeah, Sabah.
Long can I speak on
Actions 2021 provide a shared topics for peace and prosperity for people and the planet, now and into the future. At this heart are the 5 main goals adopted by altruistic Malaysia to be discussed, which are an urgent call for actions by all countries, developed and developing. This conference will recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategy on this global pandemic that improve health and education, discussing humanitarian ideas, and other spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our ocean. In order to make people realize, we believe by promote campaign that aware on peace, poverty, education, environment, health, economy and humanitarian, will act as platform to make an actions for the community and give benefits to this planet. We believe that this conference will help us to create awareness towards 5 different aspects and educate people about COVID-19 era and also encourage people to be more alert about the current condition day by day, as we need to prevent COVID-19 from keep worsen without left behind the environment cause.
Okay, we are going to start.
Let's join us on 7 until the 9th of January.
So, good evening, everyone.
2021.
I would like to can I have Miss Ruth and Miss Cycle to unmute
Hi, I'm
your-
Jenny,
And I'm Lance.
and we're Crazy Empty
Okay.
Nest.
And in this video, we're going to show you how to get started in travel hacking.
Okay, so we are in live now. We're gonna start. So I would like to welcome everyone, all of you, to the current discussion. So before we proceed, let me introduce myself. I'm Samira Nasrin, and I'll be moderating this forum today. So first of all, I would like to give a brief introduction on Hall of Aspire. So what is All of Aspire is all about? So Hall of Aspire is a forum platform organized by Altruistic Malaysia, which is essential in a process of giving all people access to knowledge and also information. So this platform is needed in these digital days because you can find it's a place where we can find critical topics and also cause that needs to be discussed. So it is also varied by topics that need to be taken into specific prospects such as peace, education, environment, health, humanitarian, and also economic. So today we are going to discuss on marine pollution in particular. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction or a brief definition of marine pollution. Marine pollution is a combination of chemicals and also trash, most of which comes from land sources and it is washed or blown into the ocean. So this pollution results in damage to the environment, to the health of all organisms, and to economic structures worldwide. To discuss more on this topic, I have 2 panels tonight. The first panelist that we have is Mr. Michael Yap, founder of Seagrass Guardians. Seagrass Guardians are spreading conservation through awareness and education, also empowering youth in initiating grassroots movements. So seagrass protects and also restores the ocean. So the next panelist that we have is Ms. Ruth Yap, the founder of Zero Waste Sabah, who is working hard in preserving our lands for future generations. So without further ado, we can jump right into our discussion session. So open question to both of the panelists. We can take turns in answering the question. So my first question would be, most of the water sources that we have on Earth is contained by the ocean. So actually, how important the ocean to the Earth climate and also atmosphere?
Okay, how about I start first? Okay, so as generally everyone of us will know, ocean is called about 70% of our planet's surface. So these huge volumes of waters actually is a buffer. It's buffer in the term is absorb any excessive heat from the atmosphere, the carbon dioxide. So this create the how to balance out the our planet climate. So it's not going to too extreme, because from land like desert, inland is a hot environment. So they need some cool air. So cool air normally is come from the oceans. So it's help to balance out and move move the air and waters around our planet. So it create a high diversities of flora and fauna to us. And recently, because of climate change, so our oceans is facing a greater threat as well, because it's a buffer to us. And because the excessive carbon dioxide from the fossil burnings, so these have created a lot of how to say disastrous phenomena to our ocean and its biodiversity as well. So through the global warmings, we have increasing seawater levels, and excessive heat from the atmosphere also causing increasing seawater temperatures and also leading to tropicalizations, which means the animal is migrate from their original habitats and also create invasive species phenomena in other part of the world as well. Then the third phenomena would be the ocean acidifications, because ocean is suck up all the carbon dioxide. So making the oceans become more acidic than before. So this also lead to disastrous impact on our marine biodiversities.
For me, if I answer how important the ocean is to the earth, very important, because as Michael has said, the ocean acts as a buffer and it also regulates the climate of our world. So you would have, if you study about the marine, there'll be currents, and you can imagine the temperature in the equator will be hotter, and so you need the ocean currents to move this hotter temperature to the north and south poles. So that helps as well. And even the creating of rains, our weather is also affected by the ocean. Yeah, and also the ocean stores about 50% of the carbon dioxide, which is more actually than the atmosphere. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Michael and also Ms. Ruth. But the next question I have is for Mr. Michael. So the ocean's blue forests are vegetated coastal ecosystems, including seagrass, meadows, mangrove forests, and also tidal marshes. So they are included in so-called the blue ocean ecosystem due to their capacity to dose of the plants that sink carbon in marine sediments. So from dissolved carbon dioxide, CO2. So what due to the capacity to those plants to what are the good services that can be provided to the marine environment and also to the people?
Okay, so in January on our planets, we have what we call carbon cycles, where the carbon will be recycled in the complete cycles. And in particular for eradicate climate change, there are a few habitats, and we label them with colors. So which associate with its natural habitats characteristic. For example, the blue carbons. So the blue is indicate is oceans. Okay. So what just now you're asking the blue carbon ecosystem. So actually it's referring as a coastal vegetative habitats, which also include another, which commonly people are not aware, is a peat swamp. Peat swamp, mangrove, salt marshes, seagrass, all these are the blue carbon ecosystem. So they help, although they just cover less than 0.1% of our ocean surface, very less compared with our whole oceans, but they sequence and trap about 59% of the oceanic carbons into the sediments. So this play very important roles in mitigate our climates. So mitigation of climate is one of the habitats. One of the functions. Another functions blue carbon ecosystem provides to us is it create a habitat. So because this blue carbon ecosystem actually is our marine producer or the fundamentals of our food chain in the oceans. So they play very important role as providing food for various of animals, create habitats and nursery ground for fishes, commercial and ecology importance as well. And in some part, it also provided coastal protections. like seagrass, mangrove, and salt mussels, they anchor in the sediments, right? But when the wave coming in, actually they help to reduce or reduce the wave energies before it reach to coastal area or the beach. So it help to protect our beach as well. But once we lost all these blue carbon ecosystems, our beach actually is prone to erosions because they are nothing to stop or slow down the wave anymore. So we will have more erosion in the future. Okay? And as part of it, for example, as for seagrass, one of the blue carbons ecosystem, actually they provide about 20%, contribute about 20% of our global fisheries. So you can imagine, beside corals, seagrass also play very important roles in our fishery resources as well as our protein source. So we, although because many people are not aware about seagrass or don't understand about seagrass, so they think seagrass is not so important to protect. But now seagrass have been recognized as uh, one of the biggest blue carbons ecosystem on the planet, which also help to mitigate our climate change for nowadays. Because recently IPCC reports just come out, and our planet may accelerate to 3 degrees Celsius higher than before. So seagrass and other blue carbon ecosystem have been put a lot of attentions how we can conserve, restore this blue carbon ecosystem to help mitigate our climate. Yeah.
That's a great insight. Yeah, but I did read the report though that the 3 degrees Celsius of increment in the temperature that actually causes the melting of the north, and then is actually causing a problem to our ocean now. So I think the next question I'm gonna ask Ms. Ruth. So what do you think are the characteristics of a balanced ecosystem, and also the great threat that we have now to aquatic biodiversity?
I think for a balanced ecosystem, a balanced ecosystem means the habitat is sustainable. So the organisms there are actually living dependent on each other. They are coexisting, and yeah, the system is balanced. Okay, so if it's imbalanced, then something was there would be missing, or something has been disrupted, then that would be an imbalance. And to answer your question, what is the largest threat to the aquatic? Well, actually, there are quite a few, but I guess one of the ones that has been highlighted most recently would be overfishing. Okay, and for Sabah, it's still fish bombing, and also pollution. Yeah, plastic pollution. It's which is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Zero waste. Yeah, we try to combat plastic pollution. So I would say those are the main ones.
Amazing, Ms. Ro. I have another question for you. So how do you think we humans and also oceans are connected? Could you say that the relationship between humans and also oceans are in harmony, or it's actually in the opposite way right now?
I think the evidence that we have so many, what Michael just said, IPCC report, 3 degrees, it's a result showing that we are not in harmony yet, right? And then we have sustainable development goals, trying to be in harmony with nature. And the connection between human and ocean, well, a very obvious one would be the protein source. Yes, we eat fish, we get our protein source from the ocean. And for Malaysia, we know we have a lot of people whose livelihood depends on the ocean, fisheries, yeah, tourism as well, yeah, tourism. What else? Yeah, the income and livelihood, and then also weather. Yeah, as I said earlier, the weather is also the changes in ocean and all that is also causing climate change. Climate change is also causing disruptive weather patterns. We have so much rain suddenly, which we are experiencing now in Sabah. So there's the connection.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth. So back to Mr. Michael. So if you have one or more species like blue whale goes extinct, so how much or how huge is the impact on the deep sea biodiversity and potential ecological consequences?
Okay, so for example, like large mammals like whales, they do contribute a significant impact in the ocean's nutrient cycle actually, which we might not see it frequently, but actually they do affect the deep sea as well. Uh, in some documentary or BBC, if you might lucky, you might see that's the documentary about whale fail, which the carcass of the whale is sink to the ocean floors, and it flourished the diversity at the deep seas. So these carcasses are sink more than 1 kilometers down into the oceans until the sea floors. First, the organic matters or the flesh of the carcass will provide food for large fish like deep ocean sharks and other type of the fish. Later on, it will take about 1 and a half years to the scavenging out all the flesh. Okay, then the microbes and the bone borings organisms will bore into the bones and injects and excrete out the nutrients to flourish the environment around the carcass. And this have been estimated that one adult whale carcass can sustain the nutrients needed by the flora and fauna at the deep seas for between 100 to 200 years. So it's quite a long period for to provide food for the organism at the deep seas, because at the deep sea they don't have sunlight, so food is very scarce. So the organism, they tend to have slower metabolisms, so they can ingest the food slowly and taking a very long time because they don't know when they have the new food source coming up. So it become a very important in the nutrient cycles, because the whale, they're feeding on the ocean surface, then they die, they pump down the nutrient to the deep oceans. Then the currents will sweat the nutrients from the deep ocean to shallow waters, which will flourish the phytoplankton groups, which then will attract more small fish, then the predator fish and apex. So it's one whole big circles in nutrient cycles.
It's extremely interesting to see how a creature could contribute so much for one entire ecosystem. So that's how important it is. So I can see how much it actually affects if one creature goes extinct. So now we cannot imagine more creatures being extinct though. So my next question will be an open question for both of the panelists. So what is the short, medium, and also long-term impacts of our current pandemic, COVID-19, on ocean sustainability? So what would their alleviators and exacerbators? So I think I would go first with Ms. Ruth.
I think one of the very early comments, after the lockdown during the pandemic, was that there were more sightings of wildlife, right? And there's also a better air quality, okay? And there's also been studies where they say that there was higher water quality as well in watersheds, canals, and lakes. And this is all because of the lockdown, the closing of factories during the pandemic. So I think in that sense, it's good. It's good for the environment. And also definitely reduce fishing activities as well during the lockdown. And we know that when there's no, I mentioned earlier that overfishing is one of the problems, the threats that our oceans are facing. So with reduced fishing activity as a result of the lockdown, our sea creatures are able to have more time to grow. So in a way, it has been helping all of the conservationists who has been fighting so hard, against overfishing. And hey, it seems like nature is saying, let us do the job for you. And and we were able to see all these things, coming. And what that shows actually, it shows that our environment is actually resilient, you know. If given more time, if given time, our environment can actually recover, can heal. But we know the greed of mankind is causing causing a lot of unsustainable activities going on. And yeah, so positively, that is what the pandemic has done. Okay. As for the downside of it, so that was the good side just now, but the downside of the pandemic was that there's, as I think everybody knows this, an increase in the usage of single-use disposable plastic, okay, which is inevitable for masks and PPE suits. Also food takeaway. You know, somebody asked me, have I had dinner just now? I just tapao, you know. One of the reasons why I don't tapao now is because I try my best to reduce single-use disposable plastic. Right? That's if I can help it again. And then another downside would be, I think all this while environment conservationists are also collecting data, and they're studying, you know, they have programs on the ground. And because of the pandemic and the lockdown, they were not able to carry out all these surveys. I have a friend in Tawau, you know, they had an 18-month project and they had to report to their funders, they have to carry out the project, but because of the lockdown, they were not able to execute it well. And you can only imagine, you know, if this continue again for the next few years, and when the timeline for the project has ended, where then would be the funding for the environmental conservation work once everything goes back to normal. And also, yeah, business definitely is suffering also, and you know, conservation work also depends on business funding. So those are the negative impacts that I can think of.
So, Mr. Michael, what do you think?
Okay. So just add on some of Ruth just shares. Yes, the good things about during the pandemic, during the lockdowns, like last year when I still in China for 1 year fellowships, and sometimes I can see some posts that in Malaysia, some watersheds, water channels, the river is becoming cleaner, the flora and fauna is coming back. So this also play a very crucial message to everyone, especially in policy makers. Why? Because the closest or close down a certain period of time, especially like fishing, we have certain areas protected, or certain area we closing during some animal spawning seasons and whatsoever. So it helped the nature to recover. So this practice actually is a good sign for us to practice at all, because we want to use our nature sustainable. We also need to give them time to recover. So how we can do it is by close down certain period of times or rotate things. Okay, certain let's say this time of the years we only can harvest resources from zone A. Next year is zone B, but the zone A will close. So let the nature to recover. So this have been, the pandemic has been show us a very good examples. So I also very hope that the policymakers and everyone's we can practice this more sustainable, because a lot of how to say indigenous communities, they do practice this, but unfortunately people are not bringing it up to showcase that these are the good examples. Okay, and another good news that I heard from last June, okay, leatherback turtles actually is considered extinct in Malaysia waters because there are no nestings anymore in Malaysia. But in June, there was sighting that a leatherback turtles in Kelantan waters. But unfortunately, the turtle, when it saw the humans approaching, it swam away. So it showed that our nature actually, we need to give them space, less in human interventions or interaction. So let them they recover, because if not, they will just swimming away or become extinct. Then our future generation won't have the chance to appreciate the nature have provided us. While the downside, like Ruth shared, plastic pollution, yes, a lot. Like quarantines, when I come back to Malaysia, during the quarantine in hotels, yes, every day, every meals is all plastic containers. And a lot of people also arguing how we can do about it. But actually, we can't do much because there is a risk of spreading the virus. So it have to be burned down. So in a way, it generate a lot of plastic pollutions. And in news articles, we see since last year, a lot of masks floating in the oceans, on the beach, the bringing up this, sorting out a lot of masks and so on. So there's always a pro and con in every scenarios. Then another side would be is causing, how do you say, sorry, just similar to Ruth just shared just now. So nothing much to add on from my side for the downside of the pandemic to the nature.
So moving back to Ms. Ruth, I have a question. So according to the United Nations, at least 800 species worldwide have affected by marine debris. So and across like 80% litter is actually plastic. So a human create 30 million metric ton of plastics in the ocean every year. Marine mammals could be entangled or ingest the plastic debris, causing suffocation, starvation, and drowning. So humans are not actually immune to this threat, but so when we actually looked at it, plastic can break down into tiny particles that we call as microplastic that can actually end up at our dinner table as seafood. So what actually mean by microplastic, and also what is the impact do you think it could give to the humans and also the future of humanity? Miss Ruth?
Okay, so microplastic is defined as anything, any plastic that is smaller than 5 millimeter. Okay, and if you ask me how do we detect it, well, with the human eye, you can only see anything less than 5 mm or less than 0.5 mm. Yeah, any smaller than that, you will need a microscope and all that stuff. And what are the impacts of microplastic? Yeah? So studies have found that plastic is toxic. They do release chemicals. A very easy way to detect them is, I don't know whether you have drank water from a mineral water bottle, and you can taste that it doesn't just taste like water. And why don't we just taste water? Is because there is plastic leach already in the water. Okay, so it causes neurotoxicity as well. Yeah, studies have shown that it causes neurotoxicity. It increased cancer risk and also causes a potentiality of metabolic disturbance. Okay, so there are quite a lot of evidence, but they studied on zebrafish as well. They expose it in high concentrations of high density polyethylene and high concentration of polystyrene. So what they found that, and they put this zebrafish in high concentration of microplastic for 21 days. And what they found was that it affected their immune system, and also it affected their the integrity of their epithelium. Okay, so these are just early studies, but it does shows that it impacts our health, which is why, when I see people steaming food sometimes in plasticware, sometimes they say, oh, this is high quality plastic, but how do you know? How can you be sure? Some people say, oh, it's not always that we eat this, but again, with all the takeaway food as well, we know that when we buy food in takeaways, it's very hot, right? Temperature is very hot. There's also been studies on hot food served in melamine plates, and the amount of plastic in it is actually significant. Yet, because of the culture we've been brought in, and because it's plastic has provided so much convenience to us, so we couldn't let go of the convenience anymore, right? But definitely the health impact is there, right? The health impact is there, and more studies need to be done. Yeah, but it is there. So I would advise people to try to reduce usage of plastic when you can. When you buy food, use your either glassware or stainless steel. Yeah, that's all.
So how do you think that humanity, like those plastics getting into our system?
Sorry, come again.
So they're consuming the fishes that have been consuming all these microplastics. So how do you think it affects the human, us?
Yeah, exactly. All those that it can increase our cancer risk. It can cause us hormone imbalance and even affect our reproductive organs as well.
So in conjunction to that question, so how do you think we can actually identify microplastic in marine animals? How do we identify? Yeah.
You can dissect them. You take one. I've tried before. I tried at home. So I took a fish, just worried about microplastic in my food in Sabah waters. Okay, so I think it's still quite safe here. I have not seen any microplastic. But in areas where plastic has been around for a very long time, I think US or one of the islands, I forgot the name, where the seagulls were, But yeah, they do observe microplastic in the guts of fishes. And what they do usually, you use a sieve, okay? You use a sieve 3 millimeter sieve size, mesh size, and then you will sieve it by extracting out all the guts, the contents of the guts. Yeah, if you want to do that. And even shellfish also, I don't know if you eat, we love our cockles and shellfish and mussels and all that. How are you going to check? You're going to eat it, right? You're not going to cut open everything and take out everything. I don't think we do that. You can if you want, but yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah, but that would how I would do it.
I feel like we have no other way other than actually dissecting it. So
yeah, in a lab you can, I guess, you have all the spectroscopy meter, I don't know, all those things in the lab which you use to detect them. Sorry, chemistry is not my thing, but yeah, you have to do it, get it tested in the lab.
Okay, so moving on to Mr. Michael. So what do you think the greatest threat that we have right now to our aquatic biodiversity and also our ecosystem services?
Okay, one of the biggest threat would be the plastic pollutions, because in current trends of the plastic pollutions, and it's estimated by 2050, our ocean will full of plastic instead of fish. So we might casting a net, so it's full of plastic, no fish at all. So plastic has become one of the major issues. Another greater issue is the climate change, because climate change do destroy our fundamentals, natural ecosystem and its services as well. For example, increasing seawater temperatures, or we call tropicalizations, where tropicals is become warmer, subtropic temperate it become warm. Okay, so in these scenarios, like fish, okay, they feel too hot, so they can migrate, they can swim to cooler areas. But how about the sessile animals, like those anchored down in the sea floor, like shellfish and corals? They can't move, so they will stay there and die. And this will push up to extinctions of the species. While those can migrate, they go to subtropicals and temperate regions. So they become invasive species. So they might be out complete the native species and wipe out the native species, and causing another extinction scenario over there as well. So these have been create a lot of issues. So that's why plastic pollutions and climate change, which are two big threat to our oceans nowadays, in my opinions. And we also need to tackle both of them together. If not, our oceans will become lifeless and our resources will be lost. And the ecosystem services such as regulate our planet climate, coastal protections, and fishery all will be collapsed. And maybe in like science fiction movies, so human eating food which manufacture or synthesis for certain materials or whatever. Yeah. So it might end like that. So that's why in the IPCC report, it mentions we still have hope, but the time frame is very, very short. So we have to do something now before it's too late.
So moving to Ms. Ruth, I have a question for you. So what can you expect if we don't protect our ocean?
Well, if we don't protect our ocean, we will, firstly, the fishermen will lose their income. Yeah, we are due to overfishing and fish bombing. This is already very evident. Okay, so the livelihood of the people would be affected. And if we don't protect it, you see a lot of litter in the ocean, so where I'm at, we have a beach called Teluk Lekas, and that stretch of beach is just filled with plastics. And no matter how many times you clean it, the next day, even after you clean it, the next day the rubbish will still be there. Why? Because researchers have found that plastics were buried as deep as 12 feet under the beach. On beach. So I can only see that it's gonna get worse. Now maybe we don't see microplastic in Teluk Lekas, but then like other countries, they've had plastics for much longer than our country, and they are already seeing microplastics. So I think we would get there very soon in the future. And definitely that is not something we want to leave behind, isn't it? A legacy to our future generation, to my children. And I remember very well when I was younger, my father would bring me to the beach. That's how I fell in love with the ocean, and learned to appreciate the ocean. Okay, so I remember the white sandy beaches, the blue crystal seas, and that love is what caused me to do what I do now. To create the awareness to protect the ocean. Now imagine if what can I leave for my children now? If I bring my children to the beach now, they can see rubbish. They can see rubbish and it's yucky and it's dirty. So do you think they would have a love for the ocean then? They would connect ocean as something that is something very dirty, and they would not have love for it. Unless I keep on telling them, oh, you need to save the ocean, you need to continue mommy's work, okay? Then maybe they will, And imagine they can only see things see beautiful things in the ocean from TV, National Geography. How sad is that? Detour a bit. When I was in New Zealand, I learned about their birds. Their extinct birds, the moa bird, which is so big. It's as tall as I think 10 feet. And I imagine, what it would have been like to be able to see these amazing creatures. And in the future, if we don't protect our ocean, we will lose all of these magnificent creatures, and our future generation will not be able to appreciate it. Right? And it's so sad. It's so sad. And I always hear people telling me, last time when I was doing marine conservation in West Malaysia, in Perhentians, in Tioman, people were telling me, oh, in the past, before tourism came, before there was tourism, such a thing called industry called tourism, the fish were so big, the mushroom corals were so big, and by the time I got there, everything was so small already because most of it were destructed. Yeah, and so what can I leave for my children? Nothing really. So they'll just be with their technology, with their handphones, and I think that is something a great loss to humanity if we do not protect our ocean.
That's amazing, Ms. Ruth. So now I have an open question. So what action should we be taken to prevent plastic pollution? So I'm going to go with Mr. Michael first. Mr. Michael, you're on mute.
Sorry for that. Okay. Generally, for stopping the plastic pollutions, it starts from everyone. So it's not like waiting for others people to do or waiting government to create policies and so on. So actually, every one of us, we can start doing now, just from simple ways. When we go grocery shopping, just bring a recycle bag. So we reduce the single-use plastic bag already. And even some of my friends, they will bring containers. So they go and buy red beans or green beans. So they use their own container to uh, keep it and go to the counter to wait and get the price stickers, then go and pay for it. So, and a lot of initiative also starting to reduce plastic by providing a bulk, bulk purchase scenarios where the shop is put all the material in a big bag. So you bring your own container and just buy whatever you need. So that also reduce plastic. And of course, if nobody support this initiative, for sure people will just continue to use plastics. So we have to start from ourselves. Everyone can do a change. Because no matter how big the issue is, we always can start from ourselves. So from this just simple daily life, we start simple. Even for sometimes we buy some stuff unavoidable, we will have some plastic containers and packaging and whatsoever, and we actually can send it for recycling if we have a proper recycling center nearby, or we make it or repurpose it as upcycling to make other products, such as like plastic containers. They cut it, become a pot for gardenings, because like now pandemics, a lot of people stay at homes. So I see a lot of people must start already start since last year. So their garden is getting bigger and bigger because they have a lot more plants and they don't have enough pot. So what they do, they use all those detergent containers and whatsoever container they can get. They cut it in very artistic or very funny animals look like pots and keep their plant in that. So it helps to cheer it out and also reduce our plastic pollution as well.
So what about Miss Ruth? What do you think? Miss Ruth, you're on mute as well.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for telling me. So this is what I do, right? Zero waste is all about what we can do to combat plastic pollution. And before I was on my zero waste journey, the most that I would do would just bring my bag, my recycle bag to buy things. But then after I joined this movement, I realized that there's so much more that we can do. And what is the amazing part after you join this movement, zero waste movement, is your trash. I used to have to take out my trash every day. But ever since I joined this movement, I only need to take out once a month or twice a month. I live in a sort of like rural area, so we don't have a systemic waste collection system. We have to send it to town. And by going zero waste, I actually save myself time and petrol from having to pack my rubbish and send it to town. Okay, and the principles that the zero waste movement used would be the 5R: refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot. I know many of us are familiar with reuse, the 3R. We talk about 3R: reuse, reduce, recycle. But I find that it is not as effective as the 5R. Why? Because most of the waste that we generated can actually be refused in the first place. Okay, so like what Michael shared just now, some people just bring containers, their own containers from home to buy food. And that is very good because you're already refusing to take that extra container in that first place. Okay, instead of thinking, oh, I can recycle this thing. Okay, this thing is made from plastic, I can recycle it. Before we talk about recycling, why not we try to refuse that waste first in the first place? Okay, and another very important thing in this 5R is actually rot. Okay, the 5th R, which is rot, which is actually composting. I think this should be taught in all schools. In every household should learn about composting. When I was in New Zealand, every house would have a composting bin right at the back of the house. Why they have this? Why is it so efficient? Because the local council actually charges them for a municipal bag. Okay, if you want to throw your rubbish, you cannot use any plastic bag here. You know, we have green, yellow, red, so many different colors. But there you can only use one type of bag, and you have to buy it from the local council. So if you use other bags to pack your rubbish, the the dump truck will not come and take your trash. Instead, they'll just leave it at the doorstep. And the whole street will be able to see that you did not follow or obey the rules. So that's kind of shaming the person, and it's effective because nobody wants to be known as the person who doesn't know how to segregate their waste and do composting and obey the rules of the council of the city, you see. So, but with composting, it has helped to reduce the usage of plastic bag. Okay, now people tell me, Ruth, I cannot take plastic. I cannot refuse plastic bag because I need the plastic bag for my rubbish. I need it for my organic waste, my fish, my vegetables and all that, and it's gonna stink. And it's required, they will tell me, it's required by our local council that we must bag our trash in plastic bags. So I have to take it, Ruth. But then my answer to them would be, hey, if you do composting, you wouldn't have to use any more plastic bags, right? So because I do composting, okay, for almost 2 years now, I started doing it, my bin doesn't smell. Okay, it doesn't smell, and I am able to make compost for my plants. I'm growing things in my garden, and you learn so much more when you do composting. You learn so much more when you are doing the 5 hours rather than just putting all your rubbish into the bag and throwing it into the dustbin. There's no knowledge gained from there. But then if you do the 5 hours, you learn what can be refused, what are the materials of product packaging made of. You learn why is this material harmful to the environment. You learn about resource management. You learn about composting. Why is it important? You learn about recycling. Before zero waste, I always thought that all plastic can be recycled because that's what we were taught, right? Okay, plastic can be recycled. But then when I got into zero waste, I learned that packaging like metallic film packaging. Oh, I happen to have this here. Okay, this kind of packaging is actually not recyclable. And I was shocked. Why are we still producing it? Okay, we have to because our climate and all that. Okay, some things we cannot avoid, but maybe we can upcycle it. Okay, and there are lots of ideas out there to upcycle it. But yeah, it's really a horror to realize that not all plastics are recyclable. We used to think that these things are actually well taken care of, but then apparently no. And also the recycling rate in Malaysia is so low compared to other countries. We used to be at 17% only. Now it's a bit better, I think, thanks to the awareness that has been going on as well. But we can do so much better. And in Sabah, our recycling rate is so low. So yeah, which is why we are doing this zero waste awareness a lot here. But definitely, by applying the 5R principles, we can help to combat waste so much more than just doing minimal. And I really hope and invite all the audience who are here tonight to join this movement, the zero waste movement.
So thank you, Ms. Ruth. I think that's a very brief explanation. I think if we could implement, if we have to buy those plastic from the local council, and then we have to pack our rubbishes, domestic waste in those, I think it would be a great implementation. And like what you say, I think we should shift our dustbins into front of our houses instead of at the back so that everyone could actually see it, right? So
yeah,
right. So I think that would be a very good implementation though. But next, I have a question for Mr. Michael. Land pollution also plays a major role on ocean pollution, especially on the climate change aspect. So how does climate change affects the marine biodiversity and its complexity towards its food chain?
Okay, so for climate change, it actually is destroying the fundamentals of the biodiversities and the food chain in our oceans. Give an example. Let's say for oceans acidifications, where oceans become more acidic. So actually, they are killing off. Not say killing off, is dissolving the calcium carbonate, which certain animals, they are using it as protections or skeletons, like corals. So corals, they have calcium carbonate as their skeletons and shelter them during for protections. Okay, But what happens when the ocean acidification happens? These skeletons is very fragile, become very fragile, and it dissolves. So it cannot support the corals. So when it cannot support the corals anymore, so the physical structures or the complexity of the physical structure will be destroyed. So it becomes flat, not much of hiding place for small fish. Okay, so when we don't have much of the hiding space for small fish, it won't attract bigger fish or the predator fish. So when we compare, we see very healthy coral reef. We see a lot of vibrant color of fish. But when we go to destroy reef, which is flat, which normally we don't see much of the fish anymore. So this directly will be affecting our food chains as well. So higher tropics, they have lesser food for them. So it will become extinct. When certain species will extinct, the whole food chain's balance will be disrupted and collapse. So the whole ecosystem, sooner or later, it will collapse at all. And another would be the like phytoplanktons, the fundamentals for the producer or oceans. Okay, so some of it they're making of silica and calcium carbonate as well. So in acidic environments, they're making them more fragile, and the size of the phytoplankton may get smaller and smaller. So when the phytoplankton is getting lesser and lesser, our filter feeder fish will be not enough food. So it will classify all up to the higher trophic levels. So in the same way, it collapse all our ecosystem. When this habitat's lost, the ecosystem services also will be lost. Let's say for mangrove, seagrass, corals, coral. So when they disappears, all those ecosystem services like regulate the climate, coastal protections, pharmaceuticals resources, because there are still a lot of active compound in marine animals is not being explored yet, which can be benefit for us in terms of treatments for cancers and so on. Okay, and yeah, so our whole ecosystem services will collapse if we don't take care. So like climate change is a huge issue, and it requires everyone to do it. If not, we're losing it, and we're losing a lot of those ecosystem services. I forget to mention is the oxygens, because the oxygen we are breathing now, about 50 to 70% is come from oceans. So let's say our ocean is destroyed without all those phytoplanktons and plants, we are getting lesser and lesser oxygen to breathe, and that will be direct affecting us. So actually, a lot of time when I talking to people, especially in the city town area, some will say, "I'm not living in this coastal area or near the beach, so why should I care about the oceans?" Yeah, you don't care, but how about we are losing all the oxygens? Then you will care, right? So it's so oceans play a lot of what to say, huge role in our life, either is direct or indirect ways.
I'm not sure how do I put in context of this, but I think we have taken granted for so many things until this pandemic hit us, and then we suddenly realized we need oxygen. I think we were in a level where hospital was running out of oxygen. Until then we realized that, oh my god, I've been taking granted of this oxygen that I've been breathing all this life, right? Until we actually wore masks, that we actually took it for granted. Like, it's been so long since I've breathed freely. So I think when the nature hit us back is when people will realize how much we took this nature for granted. Until something hit us really bad, I think that's when people started to take it very seriously, though. So, Ms. Ruth, I have a question for you. So, what are the economic impacts of marine litter?
Economic of marine litter, okay. Well, you can see that, some fishermen, they are already starting to catch litter right? Instead of bringing back fish, it is, what is in their net, they are catching all this marine litter. And also marine litter also suffocates corals and seagrass, if it's covering all these organisms that requires photosynthesis to make food. Definitely it will also affect the growth of the habitat over there, like corals and all this, which shields the fish, and which are nurseries. As we learn, seagrasses are nurseries, and coral reefs are also nurseries for fishes. And when all this litter is polluting the habitat of these animals, definitely we will get lesser fish, right? Lesser fish, thinner fish, and even fish that are ingesting microplastics already. One very good example would be the seagulls. Okay, seagulls ingesting plastics, and then the albatross. Okay, the albatross will forage for food on the ocean, and then once they'll bring it back to the nest to feed their babies, to feed their youngs, they'll regurgitate everything. So they are basically feeding their babies plastics, and these chicks are growing, but they are not getting enough nourishment because most of it are plastics. So when they are old enough to fly, they just don't have the energy to fly. They don't have the energy to take off. Okay, and most of them, their carcasses are on the island, Midway Atoll. Now I remember Midway Atoll. And yeah, and it could happen to our marine life as well. Yeah, or our marine life, if they're ingesting plastic instead of the food, the proper food. We would get very undernourished marine organisms, which of course, as they move up the chain, we will get smaller fish in the future. We don't get big ones anymore. Yeah, so I would say that would be the impact of the marine litter to our economy.
Mr. Continuation to your answer just now, do you think by time, because of these animals that we consuming plastic, like they are in digesting plastic, right? Do you think a revolution or evolution could happen where in future all these animals will actually start consuming on plastic instead?
Wow, I think that only God can answer. I cannot answer on evolution. But yeah, but I think it's very, very evident that plastic is, marine litter is affecting our economy. And also tourism. Yeah, forgot to mention about tourism. Who wants to come to a beach full of rubbish? People will just go to more beautiful places. And Malaysia is so small, compared to Indonesia. I always hear tourists telling us that, if I can choose between Malaysia and Indonesia, and yes, okay, there are also marine pollution going on in Indonesia, but you have to remember that Indonesia is such a big country, so much bigger than us, and there's so many islands. So why do people want to come to Malaysia? If all our oceans, our beaches are all polluted already, we don't have much, choice. And it's very sad that we are also hearing news about people are trying to de-gazette marine parks. I don't know whether how many of you are following inside news, or like in Sabah, north of Sabah, there are people who are trying to do silica mining, sand mining. Okay, so on one of the islands, Balambangan Islands, and that area is actually a marine park. So you can imagine, this marine park has been providing livelihood to the people. People are catching fish there, and the locals there say that this is their land, which their Nenek Moyang gave it to them. They inherited it from them, and then now people are coming to take and mine their land for silica. And then these people will come and justify and say, oh, it's actually not touching the marine, we are working on land, mining just on land. But then they forgot that it's all connected. It's all connected. You bring all these big machineries to come onto the island, and then you come and mine it. What do you think is going to happen? The ecosystem will be imbalanced then, right? And yeah, of course, marine parks are also places where you protect them, and when the fishes are protected there will be an overspilling. Okay, the fish population will overspill to the surrounding, and then you get more fish, right? So it's very worrying that people are trying to de-gazette marine parks to build airports, to do silica mining, all for the short-term vision of profit. Okay, they are not considering the long-term effect of the profit. Once you destroy an island, it would take hundreds of years to recover. And these people are just destructing it, within such a short period of time, all for the sake of short-term profit. Yeah. So definitely, economy impacted in the future.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Ruth, for that answer. So I'm going back to Mr. Michael. So some of the species that we have right now are considered to be a nuisance to humans, like jellyfish and also algae, so that are able to flourish in acidified water. So what characteristic of these threatened species that did not thrive in acidified oceans that makes them more prone to climate change?
Okay. For example, like jellyfish, yes, they can thrive in freshwater, seawaters. They can tolerate high tolerance of salinities, temperatures, and also the acidic environments. And you may say it's nuisance, but sometimes it also benefit as well, because for certain species, they are the food source to coastal communities. And recently, there are some study that certain active compounds attract from the jellyfish or stinging cell of the jellyfish actually help to the our neuron system to recover. So they have the potential, right? So in acidic environment, yes, some will try, some will not. So which would not try in acidic environments? The main characteristic of those animals would be calcium carbonate based organism, such as corals, uh, with exoskeletons like lobster, snail, clams, and so on. So those animals, their calcium carbonate structures will become very fragile. The shell of the clam will become thinner and thinner. So it's easy and prone for predations. So when we're losing all those species, which also, for example, like the shells, which are filter feeders, they help to clean our waters, filter out all the algae and whatsoever, and so on. So without them, our ocean become getting poorer in qualities. Okay. While for phytoplanktons, yeah, as I mentioned previously, some phytoplanktons, they have carbonate and silica structures or the shell wall to protect them. Okay, but in acidic environments, some study has shows that the phytoplankton, the size of it will become smaller and smaller, and their productivity is getting lesser and lesser. Okay, so you imagine in one day our oceans, we're losing at least half our phytoplankton in the oceans. It means that we are losing all our oxygens, because the oxygens we're breathing from the oceans, majority is produced by the phytoplanktons. So they are the key oxygen producer. Then followed with corals, the symbionts, algae, the zooxanthellae, seagrass, seaweed, and mangroves. Okay, so the main producer is phytoplanktons. So in acidic environments, actually is very harmful to those animals with calcium carbonate based structures like corals, shellfish, phytoplanktons, and yeah, this is the main characteristic that we can recognize, which will become extinct or near extinct in acidic environments.
Speaking about planktons, Mr. Michael, I have a question regarding on it. So plankton are some single cell algae. The phytoplankton in very particular is a very base of a several aquatic food webs are also affected actually by it. So how does plankton could actually help the environment sustainability and once it's important apart from supplying those oxygen?
Okay, phytoplanktons, they also as a base of our food chain. Okay, so it is a food source for filter feeders like krill, planktons, zooplanktons. So it will support up to the higher trophic levels. Okay, uh, and it produces oxygen, is a food source. Okay, so it's fundamentals, and it also play important roles like whales as a nutrient cycle as well. Okay, so phytoplanktons, they only occur in the surface of the oceans where there are plenty of oxygen, but some of it will die off, then they'll sink to the sea floor. So there's a lot of deep sea where there are plenty of organic matters that come from planktons, which are seen from the sea surface. Okay, so these organic carbons actually also stored in the deep seas, which help to mitigate our climate as well, just like our blue carbons. Okay, and those in the deep seas will sometimes be bring up by currents, or we call upwellings, which the currents bring the nutrients from the deep sea to the shallow waters. So there's where we see documentary, we'll see a lot of during cool currents occur, which is from the deep seas, they bring a lot of nutrients, which are decomposed material. Okay, so those will flourish the phytoplanktons again. So all the krill and small fish will flourish. Then it will attract bigger fish like sardine, tuna, and so on. So they play very important role in our oceans as well, even though they are very microscopic and very how do you say, very small that we can't see by naked eyes, but they play important roles in our oceans.
Thank you, Mr. Michael, for that. So I think shifting back to Miss Ruth. So other than poor regulation of fish overfeeding, so what are the main causes that have been contributing to aquaculture pollution?
Okay, so now we are going aquaculture, yeah. This is, I'm not an expert in the aquaculture field, but to give you a general answer, apart from overfeeding, then we know when you farm fish, you have to inject antibiotics in them as well. Yes, antibiotics, feed them antibiotics, and you know, sometimes you get yeah, what happens, you know, when you inject all these things, you know, and when they pass out, their excretion will increase the nutrients also in the water, yeah, and all this. And then sometimes if you inject antibiotic, you know, they escape to the environment, and then you get invasive species, right? All these things. So this would be the threats. The threats, are they the threats? Yeah, the problem of in aquaculture. Yeah, crowding, also overcrowding in aquaculture, in fish cages. It will also encourage the growth of disease. Yeah, so you get disease, and yeah, generally, so it's there has to be a lot. Yeah, there has to be a regulation of the size and all that. I'm not very familiar with this, but that's all I can give you.
I mean, that's already brief. You told me you're not familiar, but that's like very specific answer you gave me. Thank you for that. So going back to Mr. Michael. So back to aquaculture as well. So aquaculture is actually necessary to maintain the demand to keep overfishing under control. So however, there are a lot of current aquaculture operations negatively impacting the environment. So aquaculture causes eutrophication in multiple ways, which pollutes the open water, and it makes it unsafe for human drinking, recreational use, and also other wildlife. So referring to the traditional aquaculture in Asia, so how does fertilization and also application of feeds to enhance fish production causes aquaculture pollution?
Okay. Okay, just now have been mentioned, and even under nature or systematic feedings in the aquacultures, it still will produce waste, the excrete of the organic matters. Okay, so it will most of it will sink to the sea floors. So it in certain areas have been found that with aquaculture farms, the cage style aquaculture farms, so the sediments below the cage become muddy and muddy because all the accumulations of the organic matters. Okay, so the organic matters, they trigger nutrients blooms, and it may trigger phytoplankton bloom as well. Okay, And unfortunately, until now, the phytoplankton blooms which are toxic to us, or we commonly call it red tide, which are associated with certain species of dinoflagellates, which produce toxic at high concentration, which we have impact of in marine life and also humans when we are consume it. Okay, but unfortunately, currently there's no way we can confirm what is the triggers, but it may play one of the trigger. Okay, and when it's overfeedings, it will create a lot of issues when there are high concentrations. Okay, like previously when I working in shrimp farms, when there's high concentration in feedings, the water is enriched with nutrients. Okay, once you pump up the waters, it will causing some nutrients, how to say, burnings incidents to the flora and fauna nearby. Like for mangrove, when the organic matter concentration is too high, it actually burn the mangrove roots, and this indirectly will kill the mangrove as well. So how we going to how to say reduce this kind of negative impacts, which will help the aquaculture to flourish, to provide us sustainable seafood and protein resources, then we are overfishing the natural stock. So in recent years, they have a lot of what we call integrate multi-trophics aquaculture systems, where we don't farm single species. For example, when we farm fish, we have farmed some seaweed nearby and also some shellfish. So this will help to absorb those excessive nutrients and become the biomass of the shellfish and seaweed, which we also can sell it as a seafood resources as well. So in a way, we are closing up the nutrient cycles within the farm rather than let it escape to the natural environments. So this concept have been promoted for recent years, but practically, some people will still working on it. How we're going to do it in large scales, because when we farming multiple species, we have to take care each species. They have different requirements and this and that. Yeah, so some might need to farm in the seafloor, some in the middle waters or the temperature and so on. So a lot of people still finding the combinations which would be the best one to create a close and better complete multi-trophics aquaculture systems that would benefit the environments and also bring protein resources to us as humans.
I have an open question. I mean, anyone can answer me on this, but it's just a thought of mine. We have, how do you say, in the western side mostly, right? There has been harvesting of sturgeons, right, for caviars. That is like, we can consider that it's like a very luxury food item for human beings. I mean, caviars are very expensive, right? So there were a time where in the 1980s, overfishing happened, and how do I say it? Then there was a ban towards you can't fish sturgeons because they're facing extinction, but there are over 80 species of sturgeons to be specific. But after that, what happened was they were farming those sturgeons. So are these sturgeons actually still facing threat just because they have switched from fishing to farming, or they are safe now, or are they somehow still facing threat because these sturgeons are being farmed in a very large scale to produce caviars? They are harvested in a few years' time, right? So maybe in 20 years' time, because it's time to harvest their caviars. But we know caviars are being produced in a very, very large scale. So are they safe, or are they still facing a threat just because they switch between fishing from the sea to actually farming it, to actually rearing it in cages? Anyone can answer me this.
I haven't read much about it, but the logic would be when you farm the sturgeon, it is to relieve the pressure on the fishing of the sturgeon. So I think in that sense, that is a good thing. Yeah, that is a good thing. But as you said just now, with aquaculture, there are other sets of problems as well. And if it is regulated well, then why not, right? Why not? What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, actually, from fishing become farmings, actually help to protect the species, because if it's very regulated and they are not harming the wild stock. Let's say I just focusing on farmings, but I'm not touching the wild stock. But in another ways, the farmers actually they also can do is a wild stock replenish, which they can in the nursery they produce some hatchlings and release some back to the wilds. So in this sense, it actually helps to protect the species in the wild if they are doing that. So in a way, farming actually helps to reduce the pressure from fishing. That's one. Second, it also helps us to harvest the resources more efficient, because through fishing we take a lot of effort, like petrol, times, and so on. You have to go and fishing a huge area to get certain quantity of fish. But in aquaculture, it's more how to say, under more controls, measurables approach, when you can estimate, okay, for this batch I can produce about how much tons of fish. So it's predictable and manageable in the sense of ways. Yeah.
So I have another open question. So the oceans it's a very important component of the Earth's ecosystem. So it is a source of biodiversity, food, and also life. So the ocean is the Earth's biggest ecosystem. So which provide food, live foods, and even the air we actually breathe. Like Mr. Michael, you mentioned about the planktons that would actually give us oxygen, right? So it makes the ocean the most precious commodities that we have, and it needs to be protected. So how can we conserve, protect, and also restore the current marine biodiversity and prevent it from further destruction? So I can have Ms. Ruth answer it first, maybe?
You know, when graduating with a degree in marine science, you know, when I joined, I actually joined Ruth Yap Malaysia. That was my first organization. And going into that organization, the goal at that time, you know, the desire at that time was to conserve the ocean, right? But then when I went onto the islands, you know, and I see the impact of humans' activities, okay, especially tourism, I saw so much waste, you know. I saw so much waste produced on the islands, water bottles and all this, just everything that comes along, you know, with tourism. And I couldn't help but think that, you know, many people, as what Michael has also shared, you know, many people who don't live on coastal areas, they just can't see the connection between what they are doing with the ocean. And which is why I later on find that zero waste, what I'm doing, actually helps to connect the dots, you know. Because with zero waste, we actually becoming more aware of our actions, of our consumption habits, and definitely with all the problems that we have discussed, you know, overfishing, we talk about aquaculture, we talk about marine pollution. All this actually has got to do with responsible consumption, isn't it? Responsible consumption. And one of the goals of the Sustainable Development Goals is also to be a responsible consumer, right? Responsible consumption. So I would say, you know, how can we protect it? You know, I always tell people, you don't have to join WWF to go and dive into the ocean to save sea turtles. You know, if you cannot be there physically, which many of us cannot be there, you know, the very least that we could do is to be responsible of our consumption and to have a mindset of, sustainability. Yeah. So everything that we do, you know, we have to start seeing resources. We have to start learning how to manage the resources actually. And I'm very glad that the Malaysian government, you know, our Kementerian Alam Sekitar dan Air is actually looking to launch circular economy on plastics next month, if everything goes well. So I think this is a start, this is a start where they are also helping to conserve the ocean. Okay, and if you say how so, we've already talked about, marine pollution, all the plastics, plastics pollution and all that. So that definitely has an impact on it. So I'm looking forward to see how the government plans it out and execute it. But yeah, and also how do we conserve the ocean? We can also start by not start. We've been doing it now. Okay, we've been doing it for so many years now. Just to increase the awareness, continue to increase the awareness, to spread the awareness. One of our audience on Facebook Live actually commented that the awareness in Malaysia is still very low. It's true. It is still very, very low. Okay, and especially among rural areas as well, especially in Sabah. Okay, the whole reason I started Zero Waste Sabah is because the awareness here is so much lower than West Malaysia. Okay, and the people here, this language that they speak is also different. The dynamics is different. So, which is why Zero Waste Sabah is, we organize webinar monthly to just get this awareness going. So I would post pictures of me bringing my own bag, refusing all plastic bags in the market, and I think that helps to open the discussion, okay, and also to help people realize that, hey, we can do something about it, not just wait for the government, not just wait for NGO, and not just think that this is something only rich people can do, but that everybody can contribute to conserving our marine environment.
Yeah, I agree with Ruth. Okay, so one of the things actually with a lot of conservation group are discussing, the first one is education, because without awareness, so people don't care because they don't understand. So when we don't understand some things, we don't care, we don't love it. So that's why education must have come in first. So we are been talking, so can we put it in education systems where like primary schools, secondary schools, students are exposed to our natural issues and what kind of things is happening around us and what we can do about it. So education has been playing one of the roles, but unfortunately, we are not accustomed to it. Not compared with like Western countries, some like kindergartens, they bring the student to nature, they explore it, climb on the tree. Yeah, they just expose and experience the nature hands to hands, and from then create the love to the nature. So they will be more appreciated in the futures. Okay, and awareness, yes. And why awareness is low? Because lack of media coverage. Because a lot of times, main medias is not, how to say, not familiar with how to report nature issues. But some journalists, they have been encountered before, they'll say, hey, this kind of issue, how should I report it? Because they are not so familiar with the nature environment issues. So reporting it become a challenge to them. So one of the ways they collaborate with researchers or conservationists, so to get points and opinions, okay, how they can portray or narrative the issues better so that people can understand. Okay, another things we can do, because a lot of time when I'm doing talks, talking about restorations, a lot of people are asking me, restorations, I need to go diving or I need to go to the seas and I need some academic or scientific knowledge background and so on. I say, no, if you cannot contribute to those efforts, you can do very simple things like social medias. When you are volunteers to certain NGOs or conservation group, they might sharing some info. So just repost it in your social medias. Why? Because this will increase the coverage where people will see, oh, there's certain marine environment issue is happening. Of course, not saying that everyone should like every day non-stop posting environment issue posts, because like my Facebook page always is environment issues. Okay, so a lot of people are like, okay, that's normal. So I will encourage audience is you don't need to every day. this once a while you see some interesting issue have been brought up, just share it. And you never know, some of your friends might see it. Maybe now they are not interested, but after a while, sometimes you see a few times, maybe something interesting. So they might look into it. So this might create more awareness as well. And another thing is start from home. So every one of us from homes, we actually can do a lot of things. Like Ruth just said, the 5Rs, which actually will help conserve our ocean as well, because what we're doing on land is affecting our oceans. Like the plastic rubbish, you go to landfill, some of it accidentally or personally dump into the river. So the river will flush it to the oceans. So it's interconnected. So what we can do is we start our homes, 5Rs, and another thing I'll promote is green lifestyles. Green lifestyles, besides 5R, is low carbon lifestyle. Let's say it's just like 100 meters away, you maybe just choose to walk or ride bicycles instead of use car, which will create more carbon emissions. And this is contribute to our climate change. And those with, like, let's say, have extra monies can donate to charities or NGOs that are doing restoration works. So this, in a way, we actually, and anyways, there's plenty ways we can play a role in conserve and protect our oceans.
So we have one question from the audience. So I think after that we can end our session. So Mr. Logish Kumar Seduraman asked, turtle is important and also plays major role on biodiversity, even on pollution awareness. So however, do we really take action on prevention, or we just make suggestion but not take any actions in Malaysia? So like how Mr. Michael actually said that it is very rare for us to even see a turtle nowadays, right? So is it a sign of a failure? Because is it a sign of a failure? Can anyone actually answer? I'm opening this question.
Okay. Actually, there's a lot of people are doing works in protecting the conservations, protecting our oceans. Just that they are not getting much of publicity. Because a lot of conservation groups, they tend to do their work, walk the talks, but they are not good in social medias. Let's say posting, create some posts that attract people attention and let people know they are doing something for our oceans. Okay, let's back to the turtles. Yes, in Peninsula, a lot of times seeing turtle is very difficult because turtles, once they see humans, they run away. Okay, but what happened in Sempona area, Sabah, we always see turtles there. Do you know why? Because the tour operator there, in the past 20 years, everyone have been agreed. When we go diving and if we see any turtles, don't chase the turtles. Don't touch the turtles. If they swim toward us, let it swim. Just natural. Don't disturb them. And because of this, turtles feel safe there. So they tend to see humans. Okay, never mind. They are not harming us. But unfortunately, recent years, some operators, they are go and catch a turtle up to the boat for the tourists to take photos, which have been condemned by a lot of people. But people are not aware that actually a lot of tour operators is protecting the turtles by stopping tourists to harass the turtles, so that turtle will continue to stay there. Okay, and in Terengganu, we also have some NGOs. They are doing conservation works. They are protecting the nesting area. Rangers are patrolling the area for poaching. Unfortunately, that might happen sometimes, but we are putting efforts. A lot of people are putting efforts, but unfortunately, it's not covered by media. So that, okay, so people will think, it seems like not much people doing that. Actually, a lot of people are doing, just that they're playing a small part of it, but not much publicity on it, really.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. Mr. Reid, do you have anything to add on? You're on mute, Mr. Reid.
because the way I hear Logesh phrase the question is actually quite depressing. Are we not doing enough? Have we failed? Well, I just want to encourage you, Logesh. There are organizations out there doing work. And then from experience, when I was working in the Perhentian Islands in the year 2008, so what we did was we did coral reef camps with children in that school. Okay, so you can imagine that it was like 13 years ago. And then from time to time, I will receive stories from, the children there who has grown up now, some of them married even. But they do remember, the lessons that we have taught them. You can go and ask them, why don't you eat turtle eggs? Oh, because Ruth say don't eat. Okay, we learned that turtles need to be conserved, why is it important to it. So they have already learned all it. And the children did accept the lessons. Okay, so I believe that as long as we keep on this effort going, okay, we don't know how many that we have impact, unless we study again, do a study, how what is the impact, on environmental education on all these children. But definitely, they are people. I mean, the locals, they have been impacted by the lessons, and I hope that these people will continue, and more young people will also be more aware of this. Just keep spreading a message. Like Michael said, yeah, true. A lot of people actually do the work, but they don't publicize it enough. And also in recent years, before the pandemic, actually we read a lot of news about beach whales, ingesting plastic and all this. Actually, we do see it from every month, at least there's once. Even, whale shark beach on Sabah shores also, we see that. But then once the pandemic hit, all this news just, went to the back. Nobody talks about it anymore. Now we are talking about the economy recovery. We're talking about the vaccination. So it doesn't mean that we don't read it. No work's been done. So have hope, Logesh. Yeah, you join. Okay, fine. If you're passionate about turtles, you go and join an NGO that conserves turtles. Okay, if you're at home, you cannot join. Then you join. Come and join me. Okay, Zero Waste. Join Zero Waste Malaysia. If you're in West Malaysia, if you're in Sabah, join our Facebook group and just share your actions. I find people are so shy to say the good things they're doing. Sometimes if we don't share the good things that we're doing, sometimes it seems like we are blowing our own horn, but it's not. We're actually trying to create that awareness to show that, hey, there are better way to do things, and there are actually things that we can do something about it instead of just complaining, waiting for the government. So yeah, just do something, do what we can, and focus on the positive. Have hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth and Mr. Michael. I think we've reached the end of the forum. So thank you so much for the panelists for such a brilliant sharing session, because we can see now the insights of the other prospect, marine pollution. I feel like not many people discuss on it. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this with us. So we have come to the end of our forum today. So thank you once again, participants that are watching us live, and also our panelists for your active participation. So it is our honor and also pleasure to have you guys today. So we do hope our viewers and also myself, of course, we have gained so much of knowledge and also inspired by today's forum. So once again, thank you everyone for watching our forum. So before that, please do follow Hall of Aspire and also Artistic Malaysia on Twitter, and also Facebook page to keep checking out our latest updates on our upcoming webinars and also our upcoming activities. So I am Chamara Nasrin, your moderator today. Aspire, a place to satisfy your taste for knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mira. Thank you.
Thank you, session.
I can hear my echo a little bit. Okay, thank you, Mira. Good evening. You can go and sleep now, Michael. I'm still caring for you.